Hello, everyone. Welcome to School After Hours podcast, where staff, administrators, and families keep their finger on the pulse of the wonderful world of OST programming, aka our school time programming. I am your host, Jay Lee, and today we have the wonderful Kai Banks on the show. She is the Youth Innovation Director at Storefront for Community Design. She's been in the afterschool nonprofit world for a number of years. And she's also a youth advocate in the community. I asked Ms. Kai to be on the show today to do an after-school experience episode based on being a professional in the OST field and balancing work and life expectations. For anyone that's worked in this field, you know that it could be quite a demand, not just on your time, but also on your emotions and your mind. Sometimes you take personal hits just to make sure that you are performing well at work, and you may suffer in another area of your life, especially if you are a parent or you are family oriented. It could definitely be an extreme challenge. So that's why I brought Ms. Kai on the show, because I know that she could offer a unique perspective. She is a mom. She is an educator. She is also an advocate within her community for you, and so many other things. So I know she could definitely give insight to this topic. So for those of you that may not know, our after-school experience episodes are shows that are more informal and focused on shared experiences among professionals in the after-school programming and youth development fields. Hopefully, this episode will give insight on some of the struggles we face as OST and youth development professionals, and start a conversation about implementing self-care in the workplace, but also personally for ourselves. So before we jump into this interview, let's go ahead and get started with this Community Corner. Community Corner is a segment of the show that allows guests or myself to share tips, advice, or information about the OST field with families, youth, and community members. For this episode's Community Corner, I asked Kai, what are some good resources to be aware of in your community, but also in your personal circle if you need help? Here was her response.
So I think the first set of resources that I like to investigate are like who in your family does what and who can support you, because at the end of the day, you know, we see a lot of folks that end up becoming successful, and a lot of times their family is that first line of support. If you do not have a family, which I know that a lot of us, you know, struggle sometimes with our relationships within our families, or you may have moved somewhere and you don't have family, I usually tell women, especially moms, start building your own village around yourself and your children. Whether it's a church that you attend, somewhere in the school programming, if you know your child plays a sport, and just really starting to find folks that you are aligned with, that you trust, that you start to build a relationship with, that can maybe just assist you in pickup, you know, from the game. I had a neighbor that would watch my door for me because my child was a latchkey kid. And I couldn't afford a babysitter. So a lot of times he would just do a quick check-in. Hey, he's home. You know, hey, he's leaving the house for some reason. And, you know, that way I was able to have eyes on my house. So I think starting with family and, you know, the people in the community. Also, when it comes to resources, I think one of the huge tools is 211. Just calling United Way and figuring out exactly what's out there for whatever needs that you have, and they are able to connect you with people in your local area or organizations in your local area that have different resources that may be available to you. Social services, you know, a lot of times government assistance is great, but it unfortunately takes time and it takes a lot of paperwork. So that's why I would build a family structure community first, but also look into those resources because they can open the doors for more resources. And just be honest about your situation with folks. If you need help, you really need to let folks know that you need help.
Thank you for sharing that information, Ms. Kai. Now, let's jump into the show. So, Ms. Kai, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in OST time programming.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Kai Banks. I am a Youth Innovation Director for Storefront for Community Design. Also a mother of 3 teenage boys. And I do a lot of advocacy around youth development and community building in the city of Richmond. Also, I am a Richmond native. I grew up in the Tri-City area. So I grew up in Henrico on the outskirts of Richmond City. I did a lot of programming as a young person within the city and saw a lot of the differences that we normally see in our counties versus our urban areas. And, went off to college. I got pregnant in college, and so I had my first son at 19, and my whole life changed. And I started living for my child. Left my ex-husband from, unfortunately, an abusive marriage and had to start over in 2011. So starting over as a single parent, just getting acclimated to what that was like I said, having one income, having one adult in the household, and managing 3 children.
Right.
And so I ended up applying an after-school program. I actually started out as an AmeriCorps first.
Mm-hmm.
So I got involved in AmeriCorps, which led me to a lot of other nonprofits that were also like under that Strengthening Families umbrella. That was the mission for AmeriCorps.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, obviously, I was experiencing, some family challenges. And so I was very passionate about the mission. And so I got involved in other organizations within the group at the time. And so I started working at an after-school program in a middle school from 3:00 in the afternoon to 7:00.
Oh, Lord.
Usually like 8:30, actually. We usually didn't get out of there till 8:30 after everybody was on the bus.
And who is this?
Higher Achievement.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yes, I started at Higher Achievement, amazing program. I just really love the idea of supporting our middle school students. I think sometimes when children get to that age where they are a little bit more self-sufficient, we don't think that they still need supervision or guidance. They obviously need to be guided and grow their independence, but they still need support.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be able to do that for them, and that was my beginning. So Higher Achievement was my first. I'm sure there were others that I probably just can't remember at the moment, but as far as coming back to Richmond, that was my first experience. Higher Achievement was a program that was in, I believe, 3 middle schools here in the Richmond area. I think at the time it was 2,
Yeah,
and
it was
then
2, and then expanded out into 3, then 4, then back to 3. It did that whole.
Yeah. But it was really exciting to see, Higher Achievement came in, and then I think Next Up came in shortly after. And it was really just exciting to see that folks were realizing exactly what I just said. Like, we need to still support our middle school students. And so the program was free to families that were interested in providing extra supports and academic assistance for their young person from the 5th grade all the way to the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed with my 5th graders until they graduated from 8th grade, which was a lot. Very long days.
You was committed. Oh, yes.
I was committed. I said, I'm not going to leave. I actually started as a achievement coach originally. I did receive another job through VCU. And so I finished out the year as an achievement coach and came back for mentorship for the young people that I was working with.
Ooh. And sometimes in taking on, such a commitment, you have to really think about the time that you are investing. And thankfully, you've been able to see those students from their 8th grade year all the way up to their college years, actually. So how was that feeling?
Ooh, so I'm going to go back a little bit, because when you say time, I remember at that time I was piecemealing my jobs together to make a full-time income. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was passionate about the work that I was doing, a lot of times out of school work isn't full-time. It feels like full-time work, but as far as the hours and the pay are concerned, it's not. And so I was piecemealing. I had a job I was working from, I think, 8 to 2. Thankfully, again, like I said, my mom was available and home during the time. And so she made sure that my children got off the bus and that they got fed and they went to bed. But I usually would get home after working with other people's children and my kids would be asleep. And I usually wouldn't see them again until that next morning. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that first, right? But it's been an amazing experience. It's definitely been financially challenging as a single parent. I've been doing this work to support not only my children, but other children. And so kids, as we know, are expensive.
Yes.
A lot of times, I would want to celebrate them and support them and just different things that they had going on. And so we would every now and then have an outing where we would all go out to eat. I think I had about 8. So you go ahead and do the math on that.
I'm not gonna try. No, I'll take your word for it.
But it was so worth it to, have those experiences with them, to continue to build that relationship with them, and to just help to create memories with them. They were, to me, very committed because they were coming to school at 7, 8 o'clock. They were staying after school because they also believed in continued development in themselves. And so they would get home at 8, in the afternoon. I was like, you guys are the bomb for even participating in this process. And so I just wanted to continue to wrap my arms around them and support them. But like you say, I've got a few in college. Lots of graduation gifts, lots of cash apps. I see Community 50/50 post, another organization that works in the community with our young people. And sometimes it's just as simple as like they need $5 or they need, books or something really simple in our eyes as an adult. And it's really important to them. And so just being able to provide that kind of support for them just means the world. Yeah, it's just great.
Right. And I want to go back to what you said, to echo off of what you said, Ms. Kai. Now, and starting off in after school time programming, you do not always get the full-time job. Like most of the workers in OST programming start off as part-time workers. It's very rare that you get into those coordinator positions or director positions based on your previous experience, especially if you're starting straight out of college like I did. I knew that I had a passion and a love for education. I wasn't able to go into the classroom because of not being able to pass my assessments for my license. But there's something else that I knew that I wanted to do, like within this realm. That's when I started to get into OST programming. I was like, oh, I'm here. This is it. Yeah.
This is it. Yeah.
But then we started looking at this money and this time. I was like, so how are we going to make this work?
And it makes it hard. And that's why I had to leave, honestly, because, I was, like I said, working 2, 3 jobs to make one. And then I started missing my children, as well. So that was hard because I was working with kids during the hours that my kids would normally see me because, they're in school from 8 to 3 or whatever. And so, the pay, it always frustrates me. It's such an important job, even for daycare providers. Like you are literally with someone's child about half the time that they're with them, if you look at the day. And so to just, not feel like you're being compensated or just not being able to pay your own bills, it makes it hard to be committed to the work in the ways that you want to be.
Right, exactly. And especially in childcare, depending on what organizations that you work for, like some of them go off the bare minimum of doing just minimum wage and pay and starting you from there to move up. But when you look at the work that needs to be done, or the work that you do, it is completely a full-time job and not a part-time job.
It is. Absolutely. Actually, my first job was childcare, believe it or not. I worked at Rainbow Station with 2-year-olds. And I remember my pay rate was $6.75. And granted, I was a high school student, so that was good money for me, but I couldn't imagine working as an adult in that position.
Right, exactly. And then it becomes, when do we start having these conversations with whoever decides the salary for this? Like, hey, we may not be educators in the classroom, but, we do provide a certain level of care, a certain level of interest and investment in the students. So when do we start investing in educators, not just within the teacher skills, because teachers get it rough too. Based on how the hours that has to be put in behind the scenes, nobody thinks about, like, teachers work beyond that 7 a.m. to 3, 4 afternoon time period. Working in a school, I don't see some teachers leave the building until about when I leave at 6 o'clock, if not later.
Yes, and I hear about it all the time. I mean, even if you've left the building, you're working on lessons planning, you're working on, different items that may be needed for a field trip, or I don't know that it really ever stops, honestly. I salute our teachers.
Yes.
I salute them because I did after school and I could do after school, but I don't know how all day.
All day.
all
all
day.
day. And for us working in the spaces of being, full-time workers and then part-time workers as well, the demands that are on us from whichever organizations that we work for, being realistic about the time period. Like there are spaces where you have 10,000 things, literally 10,000 things to do. You have to account for the time that you're in programming, which is usually 3-4 hours if you're doing after school care. Let's not include before school care there because that's something completely different.
Right.
Then you have to account for the number of meetings that you have to attend within a week, as well as planning that you have to do for activities. Then your follow-ups with parents to check on the child if they were not able to attend programming, but also continuously looking out into the community to find resources for some of the things that you may need, or just connecting yourself, period, to the community so you know what's around you, and to make sure your organization's presence is known in the area.
You potentially may have 3 to 4 hours to get these things done. So, is that really enough time to be the most successful that you can at your job? And 9 times out of 10, it's not.
No, no. I will say, because I love giving shout outs, that the Robbins Foundation has just changed some of their focus areas for our 0 to 5, I believe. And I think that's so important because, a lot of times working with young people and especially working at the middle school age, we're like looking at certain behaviors or certain things, and we're not only do you have limited time, but you've also gotten this child at a state where they are like past the development age where they're soaking it in, and now they're just kind of taking what they've soaked in and pushing it out. And so I'm really thankful that some folks are starting to realize how important early education and early child care is.
Yes.
And hopefully to help alleviate some of those challenges that we see once you hit the middle school and high school age.
Oh, most definitely, especially with this social emotional learning that is very prevalent to what we're going through now, especially with this pandemic, is getting more shine and more recognition. So you talked about it a little bit, and starting off your career in OST programming, what were some of I believe you touched base on it, some of the highs and the lows of this type of work?
I got a list now.
Yeah.
Let's see. We're gonna start high first,
Yeah,
right?
start off on this positive note. Yes.
We're gonna start off on the positive. I love working with young people. There's something about just, them not being at a totally indoctrined stage yet, a totally adult stage yet, where they still have that freedom, that freeness, and just, unbound from, all of the kind of policies and thoughts and bills and all the things that we have as adults. And so they just continue to like inspire me and keep me hopeful for the future. So I definitely have to say that. And then being able to impact someone else's life. I had a huge mentor in my life who is well known in Richmond. Her name was Lorna Pinkney. And I just remember wanting to be like her. And I think that's so important for our young people to have positive people in their life, because, it doesn't really matter what kind of family structure you've come from, economically, racially, everything isn't a good fit for everybody, and everybody's not the same. I have 3 children who are very different, and they would all need, to me, a different type of mentor, a different type of person in their life. So I'm going to just say those 2 first. What are some other highs? I think those are like the biggest, like just the work itself. Like I've learned all the new dances. They keep me abreast on everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I got a little extra energy. So I just love like the spirit of our young people, and I hope, that they see the value in themselves. And so I just hope to continue to bring that. I think it also makes you really like flexible. It has taught me how to, like you said, pivot, which since COVID has happened, I'm like, especially even as a mom, it's like you're constantly having to like think on your feet, pivot, be patient, be creative. And so something that I don't think I could have learned in school, I've been able to learn like in my real world experiences in my positions working in out of school, after school, out of school time. Some of the lows.
Yeah.
Finances is all. I just can't stress it enough. I know some people don't like to talk about finances, but we need to talk about
Yeah, we need to talk
finances.
about this money. Somebody need to cut.
Children cost money, and they are an investment,
Mhm.
and I believe that they should be an important investment that we all kind of have at the top of our list. But funding is always a challenge. Some of the things that I would see, you would have a space for our young people, but the food quality might not be so good, or we were in the schools, which it was easy to transition, but just being able to expose them to more field trips and other places, I think would be really incredible. And then just policy, there's a lot of policy tied to what you can and can't do with the school system. And so if you're in a program that's tied to the school system, it can sometimes limit you. Also, if they're not your child, it could if you're like one of those people like me, I'm ready to take them everywhere. And so, having to make sure I get permission and talk to each parent. And sometimes that's also a low in just wanting to develop a stronger relationship with the parent. I noticed there were some parents that just weren't always available for different reasons. Some of them good and some of them understandable, and some of them just didn't want to be engaged for whatever reason. And so that was tough.
Right.
That was tough because you may want to really support a young person in something, and not being able to get in contact with their parent impacted that. Right. I hear all the time my dad wouldn't fill out my FAFSA because he didn't have the understanding or he was scared. And that changes the trajectory of a child's life tremendously.
Yeah.
So I think those would be my lows. Please invest in young people. They're gonna be the ones to take care of us later.
Right. So if hopefully we can invest in them so they can invest in us later on down the road.
That's right.
As you started to grow your family and still work in the OST space, did those challenges change? Those highs and lows, did they change? And if they did, how so?
They have. So, it's funny that you even asked that because I was thinking about that. So my youngest son used to come with me when I would mentor. And at the time, I think he was a little too young. So he was exposed to some things that obviously middle school students are going through, and he's an elementary school student. And so that was a challenge. But at the same time, I think it was a great experience for him to almost like a Montessori style learning. He got a chance to engage with students that were older. And so he's always felt comfortable speaking to different age groups. So that's been really great. And so I would say it's changed in that it was tough when he was younger to bring him with me. Now it's great because I'm actually engaging with him about the programming that I'm creating. And so I have a home voice, a home youth voice, if I can't get the other youth voices to really help me as I'm, thinking of things for them to do and creating, because I'm really big on youth led.
Right.
That's my other piece. Is a lot of times at that age group, I think sometimes we try to tell young people what to do instead of asking them questions and listening. So it's always a challenge when you have kids and you work with kids. But I think there's, like I said, the beauty in that is you can also merge those two worlds. And so I found a way to do it, but it wasn't always easy.
Right.
Like I said, I think now that they're teenagers, it's been amazing because a lot of what I've learned in working with our teenagers in the school system, I've been able to, as a parent, implement for my children. So high school placement, I learned so much working with higher achievement and doing the work of high school placement. And so when my son got to school, it was like, you need algebra and you need a foreign language. So I was right on top of his counselor as soon as he started. So that was a huge benefit for me to be able to have that process with our outer school students in the city and then implement that within my own family. Yeah, I think those would be the ones. And then Saturdays, sometimes I have to give up my Saturdays. And so I loved doing it in the beginning. And now that I think that, I've done the work for a little while, Saturday's like my day. And so, but sometimes that is one of the few days where you can engage with a young person and have the time because they're in school during the week. So
I feel you.
So yeah.
And
I think it's been a good process. I've done some work around, so I've worked with Tammy Mobley in healthy relationships.
Tammy was on the show too.
Yes, she's amazing also. She's great. I love her. I've learned so much from her, but in working with her, teaching healthy relationships, that also helped to prep me for my own children and having those conversations with my own children. So I think it's worked out pretty well, to be honest. It's been tough I think in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning when they were really
Mm-hmm.
young, that was
Right.
hard.
But as they're
Yeah.
older and they're teenagers, you like, all right, we could really get with it.
Yeah, like I've done this. I've been
Right.
here. I got
Right.
this. And it is different when it's yours,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I got a little insight.
Right.
So,
And that's the thing that I know working in this space with certain positions that I've had, from being a team director to being an assistant coordinator, looking at where I was in my life and the changes, it becomes more of a question of, are these spaces more so for individuals that just have single life and have time? I understand that even with single people, like, they got things to do, like they ain't trying to be here buried underneath work all the day long, like what we doing? But
yeah.
also when you have the different obligation of a family, spouses, children, all at the same time, is this a conducive space for you when we talk about work and life balance? And I know that's a
Yeah.
conversation.
That is definitely a conversation. And also a tough one because I think it's so important to have people that understand young people in those spaces. And not to say that people that don't have kids don't, but I think you have a different connection when you've had a
Mm-hmm.
child. I like to say that you have, at least from my experience. Because I think there's some rock stars. I mean, Miss Renee was a rock
Oh, yes.
star, and I don't think she had children. So, sometimes I think yes, it is probably better for our folks that are single to be able to have that space and really be able to take the time. I felt like that was one of the things that was hard for me. I didn't always have as much time as I would like to really invest in the work that I was doing in the ways that I wanted to because my family did come first and I did have a family that needed
Mm-hmm.
me. So I don't know. I think there's a good diversity is good everywhere. So I think we need a good balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that currently, I'm working with someone who doesn't have children. I do have children. And I think it's been great because I've been able to share things that he may not have known, but he's also had the time and opportunity to get a lot of things done that he's actually been able to support me in this process. So I would say some diversity is good.
So in the process of managing family, the demands of work, because it can be a lot, how did you begin to create your balance?
Ooh, that's a constant process, is what I will say.
Yes. Good answer.
I, it's a constant process, okay? Because you'll think the day is going to go one way. You can plan it all out. And I'm telling you, Johnny over here is like, it's not going to do, it's not the day, Miss Kai.
Yeah.
I've just learned how to prepare. So, like, I carry a lot of things with me: scissors, tape, pencil, paper. Like, I've always got something in my back pocket and ready to go. Activities in my head that I've done to just, like bring the group back. And I live by my calendar. I don't, my son's pickup time is on my calendar, and it just keeps me on schedule. So, it's tough because, like I said, as prepared as you can be, young people will throw you for a loop anytime. So I just say be prepared and make sure you have a backpack of tools and resources. And I think there's some really great organizations in the city that host workshops.
Mm-hmm.
I think High Achievement was really great about making sure that we had some additional just tools and resources to have in our toolbox.
And for some of the other organizations that you've worked for, because I know you worked with Girls for a Change.
Yes.
And working in that space, I'm sorry, like something keeps on popping up on my screen. I'm like, what in the world is this? Why? For your role with Girls for a Change, having a little bit of autonomy to kind of be creative and do, what you want, was that helpful in growing as a professional, but also important in creating that balance for you as far as work and home life is concerned?
Definitely. The really great thing about Girls for a Change is there were Black women in every corner, and there was just so much support within that organization at the time that I was there. And so, like, just that transition, and I could call Angela and say, "Hey, I've got this with my son," and I remember there was a point where I was in crisis and she's like, we are here to support you. So there's a beauty in working in these spaces that I think kind of brings, a very much community family feel. And if you're in the right one, I'm thankful for the ones that I've been in. And then just learning from those women. Like those are women that are seasoned. And so they've been there, done that. And so here I am in my early stages of working with young people or working with my own children and being able to have their expertise and their support was really helpful. So, and then I was given, like you said, a lot of flexibility as well as just a lot of trust. And so I was able to really look at my group of young people and say, this is what I think they need. And I feel like I have the support to be able to do what it is that I think that would be best for them. And that's amazing because, like I said, everything isn't a good fit for everybody. And so you may have something that works really well for one child and it doesn't work for that other child. And so being able to have that flexibility to say, and even regroup and say, okay, this is what's going on. What do you think we should do? Just having that support.
Right. Exactly.
Support. Protective factors is one of the key elements of having, successful kids. And so having all of that support around young people to be able to just, like I said, do what I felt like was best is why that organization is just so amazing and doing great things.
Right.
I got to give my shout outs. I'm sorry.
Look, give these people their roses while they're here. Like,
that's right. I will plug you in a heartbeat. And Girls for Change is an awesome organization doing really great work. And not only did I impact a lot of young ladies that, have expressed to me, but they impacted my life during a season where I really needed to be around that energy. So,
gotcha. Angela, if you ever want to come on the show, let me know. Also, you bring up a good point, though, between having supportive factors or having good support where you are versus not having that support where you are. It completely makes a difference in how you perform as a professional. It really, really does. Being able to have a supervisor that understands like the demands behind the scenes of what's going on in your life, but also trust that you know what is important and that you will still continue to get the job done with certain levels of help and flexibility.
Right.
So I think that is truly important, and you don't always get that in the spaces that you are. There's a lot of demand for perform, but yet you do not always have the support to make sure that you are performing to your maximum capacity. Which brings me to another question for you is, in those times of, highs and lows and challenges, did you ever reach that point where you're like, you know what, I don't know if this is something that I want to continue to do?
Every day.
Maybe I need to look into something else because
every day.
I'm not sure if this is the right choice. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness. Every day, I'm telling you, I would question, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? I could be on a beach somewhere, because it's a commitment and it's a lot of work. And it's not only sometimes physically draining, it can be very mentally draining. And so, yes, I have asked myself probably every day, what am I doing? But every time I see a young person doing something great or thanking me or just living their life in a great way, it's like, it just brings me back to why I'm here. So I don't know if all professionals question themselves every day. I might, because I have my own children plus bonus children.
That's the real conversation. Like, you think about the time that you are investing in outside lives, but also the time that you want to invest in the children that you have, and trying to find that balance. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Like, it's a whole struggle. And
it is.
You bite the bullet and you sacrifice and you get hit somewhere. You know what I mean? And then have to be mentally okay with the choice of, okay, I might miss out on this, or this may not happen, and so on and so forth. So I feel like it's always a fight between those places of, do I come and support and show up here for these children that I know that need it the most? And
Mm-hmm.
how do I begin to still show up for my own that still need a good portion of me as a parent?
Absolutely. I actually took a break. So I did see that. My children unfortunately did suffer a little bit because of that. My youngest son told me I work too
Mm-hmm.
much.
Always the baby.
And
It's
so
always the like, look, I'm gonna need you to get your life together, man.
yeah, that was my wake up call. And of course, I wanted to be upset about as a mom. It was like you have no idea what I've sacrificed. You have no idea what I'm out here doing. But then I had to realize, like, at the end of the day, right now, what is valuable to him is time with his
Mm-hmm.
mom. And here I am spending time with other people's children, but I'm not spending time with my child or my children. And so yes, my children have definitely sacrificed some of that
Mm-hmm.
time of having me in their life, and being able to even do football. And I can't pick you up from
Right.
football because and so that was really hard. So I took a break, and partially from my students as well. They were really like questioning me about just, I guess I did a really great job, because they would start questioning me about things. They were like, well, Miss Kai, I really think that you need to develop in this area, and just in a great
Right.
way, because I hadn't finished my degree. And so they were trying to inspire me to finish. And so even just being selfish with yourself, in
Mm.
this field, you are giving of yourself. And I also had to remind myself that I'm no good to anybody if I'm not good. So I took a break. I went back to school. I started working for VCU and got back into my degree. I was doing a lot of direct service and working with young people, but I was also frustrated by some of the things that I was seeing in policy, and wanted to gain a better perspective so I could better assist our young
Right.
people. And so I took I would say like a 5-year break from probably mostly after school programs. I would still facilitate here and there for specific
Mm-hmm.
programming. But yeah, I needed a break. And then I missed everybody and came
Right,
back.
right,
But
right, right. But having that break, when you did came back, what was your mindset of, okay, this is what I'm going to do different, because now priorities definitely have to be different now that I'm fully aware of the demands on me as far as work. Like, how did you begin to position yourself as far as setting boundaries of, okay, this is what I need for my personal life,
mhm.
but also this is what I need to be supported in my work life?
Ooh, that's a work in progress. As though it's still a work in progress. Ooh, that's a good question. I'm more aware. I think that's the biggest thing, is just being aware. Like I said, my son writing that little note to me, and he had to write it. He didn't even say it to me. I mean, he said it and I've heard it, right? But I didn't change
Right.
my ways. And so one day I came into my office, and it was on my big poster board that I had written all these ideas of all these things that I wanted to do for programming. And I saw in little letters, "You work too much." And so just being aware was my first step.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware and figuring out, what can I do different. I started making sure that I spent specific time with him,
Mm-hmm.
so he didn't feel left out, or he didn't feel like I was here investing in all these young people and not him. And so we did specific activities, maybe like every other week. And then, every other week from there, I might go to a community activity or community event. I think that was probably the start, is the awareness, but then creating a schedule for myself
Right.
and listening to my body as
Oh,
well.
yes.
I would just keep pushing and pushing, and then I'm out for 2 weeks because I've got some virus that they don't even know what it is, right? Or I'm just like drained.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking breaks, I have, even if I don't feel like I need one right away, but I might be getting there, I have taken the time out to take breaks for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's a day trip to the Yorktown Beach,
Right.
which is 45 minutes away. Maybe it's a 20-minute, let me go sit by the river and just breathe.
Yep.
I have done a lot of that, especially this year, especially in my new role as a director. It's very different than working as a program manager or program assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only am I doing the physical work and working with our young people, I have all of those other administrative and operational and just everything else that comes with it. So
I know that's right. I know that is true.
yeah.
So this is a good, thank you for sharing, Miss Kai.
Yes.
So all this inside information of, trying to stay balanced and just being aware in this field, but also, taking the time to do this heart to heart, because that's what I feel like it is, like, to make people aware of some of the challenges that we face, but also those that are coming into the field, like make them know that you're not the only ones going through it. Like, you're not the only ones that's trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's an ongoing process, like you said. It's an ongoing process, and
it is.
As your life changes, it changes.
Yep,
it definitely does. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into our Professionals Lounge.
Professionals Lounge is a segment of the show that allows guests to share advice and tips with other practitioners in the OST and youth development field about how they can begin growing their gifts and talents, but also develop themselves as professionals in the field.
Okay.
All right. My question for you for Professionals Lounge is, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently in your career in OST programming?
This is a hard one because I'm definitely one of those people that feels like my life has had the journey that it was supposed to have. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I definitely wish that I would have finished school. I think that when you're talking to young people about academic success and career success and just being successful, during the time that I was there, I was, like I said, going through a transition. And so there were times where I didn't always know where to lead them. And I was usually just pretty honest with them. Like, this is the road that I took, and this is why I can tell you not to take this road. And I will walk you through this other road, but I don't know what that other road looks like, right? So I think it is important to develop within yourself and to finish school and just learn as much as you can so you can be an asset to the work that you're doing. I think one big one that I've been really great at, and I'm thankful because I've had folks that have shared with me, I'm not sure how to phrase it. So a lot of times when you're teaching, whether it's after school, whether it's all day school, you're usually in a community that is not the community you live in.
Some folks talk about it.
Some folks actually are, there's a small portion, I'm sure, that live and work in their community, but a lot of times you are coming into a community that is not yours. And so what I would share with professionals is, and I'm trying to find the best words to say this, but I think listen first, observe. Don't go into communities thinking like you know everything and you can tell folks what they need to do. And because a lot of times I would come in and teach something, and I had to learn that sometimes my kids weren't in the space for it. And there were some basic needs that needed to be met, or maybe they just needed to talk to me. They just needed a breather. And so sometimes we get so caught up in, I want to make sure I'm teaching and I want to make sure they get this. Like you said, some of those, what is the word? Those things that we got to hit professionally due to administration, but it's not always as important as just making sure that they're okay, making sure that you are a good listener, making sure that you are trustworthy. Right. So definitely, I would say take a step back and be a listener and an observer and learn what that other perspective really looks like for that young person and in that community. Also engage with the parents. Please, please, please find a way to engage with. Even as a parent that is engaged, I thank God for the teachers that called me before I got to them. A lot of times I had good intentions, depending on what level it is. Middle school, it's like 7 different teachers. And I've got 3 children, so that's 7 times 3, because they're right now in their middle, high school, and college. And so do that engagement. Higher Achievement was really great about make that first phone call just to introduce yourself. And say, hey, I'm such and such. I will be with your young person, and I just wanted to talk to you about what your expectations are for them. I think that's really important. So I think those would be the ones that I can think of that I feel like are super important. Is definitely develop yourself professionally, listen and observe, and engage with your parents or guardians. sometimes it's not always a parent, it might be a guardian.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kai, for being on the show, sharing all this wonderful information with us. So if anyone ever wanted to get in contact with you just to connect with you for any future events that you may have, or even potentially book you for a workshop, how'd they get in touch with you?
Well, I am on all social media platforms. Well, let me not say that. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn under my name, Kai Banks. My Instagram is Little Mama Big Heart. You can also email me. My email address is banksk3@gmail.com. I'm in the community is what I always tell people. I'm like, catch me outside. You can tell I work with young people because catch me outside is because I'm out. Because I also like to physically appear and show up, and I don't want to come into a community only to do something, just something. I want to get to know the community. So currently I'm working in Highland Park, and so I'm at the 6 Points Innovation Center, which is a youth center ages 13 to 24. And we accept, youth in the area that may need help with their career focus, may need just someone to listen to, or even wraparound services. They're usually, of course, during work hours. So I think it's like 9 to 3. And then programming hours are usually after 3. I think those will be the best ways to catch me and get in touch with me.
Got it. Well, thank you, ma'am, for your time. Like I said, as always, you are always welcome back to the show. So anytime you want to sit down and hash out this conversation again, perfectly.
Yes. Yes, because we could go some deeper a little bit. And I hope people just really advocate for our young people and our professionals that are working with young people. This is not easy work. You definitely hopefully are in the field because you're passionate and committed. But even with that, it is not easy work, and support is always needed. So whether it's you live in the neighborhood of a school, you can join the PTA and support by sending money or sending, swag or whatever it is, because, the schools are in our communities.
Yes.
And those communities are the communities we live in. So support a school nearby you if you can, even if you don't have your own children. But yeah, and advocate for our young people. But thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
This was really fun.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our show. I'd like to thank Ms. Kai for being our guest today. This was an amazing conversation. I hope someone was able to listen to it and take some good information from it, but also know and realize that if you are working in this field, that you are not by yourself. It is a struggle, but you just got to kind of find your peace, but also be okay with asking for help where you need it. Find a mentor, find someone that you look up to and that you trust to have these conversations with, but also plan ahead for what you want your future to look like in this space. That is very, very important. So you know what your goal is, how far you're willing to go, but also draw some boundaries. There's nothing wrong with setting limits to your time so that you can still enjoy life, but also enjoy your space, because that's what's most important. Hopefully, Ms. Kai, you could come back on the show sometime soon and we could, have round 2 of this conversation. Invite some friends. Let's see what else we could add to the pot when it comes to after school time programming from the personal experience of the professionals that's in it. Well, if you feel that you got some good information from the show, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or visit the Podchaser website and leave us a comment. This will help us get some feedback on the show and collect testimonials for our personal website. Share us. Share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your network. Help us spread the word about how OSC programming is impacting our youth and our communities. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Well, that's all I have for today. In the words of Mr. Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Until next time, bye-bye.